This is a video about how I learned what retro computing was about and a rabbit hole I fell into soon afterwards. I'm not cutting edge, but I've tended to track with the newest advances in technical devices over the years. It's been a parade of desktop computers, laptops, game consoles, cameras, MP3 players, netbooks, tablets, set-top boxes, and then a whole new round of the same stuff again and again. And I haven't even mentioned the cell phones and TVs here. It's kind of shocking laid out like this, but I've always tended to think that newer was better. So over the years, I haven't kept track of my old devices. In my mind, they were obsolete. Whenever I got a new device, I got rid of the old one, and they've all been destined for the same places.
And that's made possible by UNIVAC's unique ability to check itself on possible errors.
Someone once said that software stands between the user and the machine, and to me this conveys this picture of a great wall of software up there that you have to overcome to get anything done. There's certainly a grain of truth in the remark.
I only had a vague notion that there were some people out there still playing with old games and working on old computers until I was doing some research on early operating systems a few years back. I stumbled across this video by 8-Bit Guy about a modern kit-built system that works without a microprocessor. It's an interesting machine, but as I started watching more of these videos, I became fascinated by this whole community of people who were reliving the old days of computing and gaming. It makes sense when you think about it. People who love cars love to bring the cars of their youth back to life. Why wouldn't people who love computers do the same things? And there are tons of great makers on YouTube putting out some amazing content. As a latecomer, I had lots of catching up to do. So, I watched a lot of videos. I really dig hearing about the connections these folks have with these early home systems. I was surprised how interested I was in hearing the stories about the impacts these systems and the communities that grew around them had on the creators' young lives. Even though I grew up in the era where microcomputers first became available, and I've always been into video games, it wasn't until my mid-20s that I got interested in computers, and that's well into the Pentium era. I enjoyed the stories, but I really didn't have a personal connection to any of these early computers. Until I saw this machine. This is the Commodore Plus 4, or as I'd learned, the least popular of all the Commodore computers out there. It came out in 1984 to target the business market, and so it came with 4 built-in business applications: a word processor, a spreadsheet, a file manager/database thing, and a graphing application. By all accounts, the ROM resident software was bad. It didn't stand a chance in the crowded business market. It wasn't compatible with Commodore's other computers, so the Commodore 64 fans didn't have any interest in it. The machine was widely panned, and sales were extremely sluggish as competition in the market ramped up. The price dropped over and over to the point where they were almost giving the thing away. But seeing this jarred a memory loose. Way back in 1985 or so, when I was about 13, my stepmom got one of these as a promotional gift when she and my dad sat through one of those timeshare pitches. If you sat through a high-pressured sales pitch on the benefits of owning a timeshare condo, they would give you a free gift. She got a Commodore Plus 4 for their time. She let me use the computer over the summer, and I remember spending the whole summer typing in example programs from the user's manual. At the end of the summer, I gave it back to her and then really didn't revisit computers for a decade. But then, when I saw it there on the screen almost 40 years later, I got a super rush of nostalgia. Now that I knew what it was, I spent some time learning about the Plus 4. Because the computer wasn't widely used, there aren't a lot of videos on it, but I found some good ones. I learned that the things I'd been typing in were basic programs. I remembered I'd done some modifications to the programs and combined a few things, but never went very far. I remember I liked to play with the sound and color commands, but summers go by fast when you're 13. I'd moved on. Then I had the thought, what would it feel like to go back and revisit that machine? Then I said, nah, I don't want to go down the road of collecting old gear I won't use. It won't work, and there'll be hours of troubleshooting, and then it'll just collect dust. I'm not known for my self-discipline, but my wife beat me to the punch this time and ordered one off eBay. It just showed up one day. I had no idea. She is so cool. But when I went to turn it on, it didn't work. It powered on, but no picture came out. I thought maybe it was just the newer TV, that it couldn't interpret the ancient RF signals. After trying every screen in my house, I thought maybe it was the modern monitors altogether. I went down to REPC and found this amazing RCA color track from 1986 to see if that would do the trick. It had all the right connections, so I was feeling pretty optimistic. No dice though. If it wouldn't work on a TV from the same time frame, it had to be the computer itself. So I went to learn some more. I tested some stuff, I jiggled some stuff around, and then I tested some more stuff. I tested the power supply and that worked fine. I tried testing the actual chips. They seem to be working okay, but I don't have enough experience with electronics to be sure that I was reading it right. It seemed like it should work, but it just didn't. One suggestion was to test parts by swapping them with a known working machine until you find the one that doesn't work on yours. So that's where this other one comes in. The listing showed it displaying on a monitor, and it said it was tested to boot. Guess what? It did. I didn't remember a lot about this computer, but I did remember how frustrating it was to use without a disk drive. These things don't have built-in disks. You can type programs all day long, but without a tape or disk drive, you can't save them. Every time you restart the computer or it crashed, it wiped the memory. I remember that being a bummer when I was a kid, so I looked at my options. Tape drive. These are magnetic tape media. While the drive was specialized, the tapes were the same kind that you used to record audio on. The problem with these are that they are slow and not super reliable, with reads and writes often failing. Floppy disk drive. Commodore 1541 and 1551 were 5¼ true floppy drives and almost as complex of a machine as a computer itself. The problem with these are that they're large and expensive, and the floppies are hard to come by. I already had 3 pieces of retro equipment taking up space, so this time I decided to go with a modern emulator built around a Raspberry Pi Zero. It's a neat little device that with the correct firmware can emulate a Commodore 1541 drive. The interesting part is that it doesn't run Raspbian OS at all, but some custom firmware that makes use of 1541 ROMs. Getting it to work was not straightforward, but again, I really appreciate all the people out there who make detailed videos on these specialty topics. I want to stop for a second. A lot of what I've been talking about seems like it might be frustrating, and it was a little. In reality, while I was troubleshooting and learning about these machines, I rediscovered something that I'd lost over the years without even knowing it, an optimism about computing. There is a joy to the act of making things work. Even though it's taken multiple steps to get one functioning, I've enjoyed all of it, and I'm pleased with how the little machine works. It's fun. There's more to go to get the other one working, and I'm enjoying the process. Let's talk about manuals for a second, too. The system doesn't provide any hints about what you can do with it when you turn it on. It's just a prompt. You have to know what commands it knows to make it do anything, and that's where the manual comes in. Understanding how to use the computer requires some type of written instructions, which makes a little book feel like an integral part of the system, like a piece of the computer itself. It starts by walking you through the setup, how to connect the monitor and stuff like that. Then it teaches you how to interact with the computer through commands and programs. As I went through the basics of the manual, pun intended, I relearned how to write some basic code, manipulate the appearance, make sounds, and save and read files to the disk drive. I found I actually enjoyed interacting with the machine. Basic won't become my favorite language, but it's capable enough. So far, I've enjoyed the puzzle of figuring out how to make it do things that I've been getting for free in modern languages. The thing is, for a 40-year-old computer, it's actually a very interesting machine to interact with. It does math, it makes sounds, moves stuff around on the screen, the stuff a computer's supposed to do. When I talked about optimism earlier, you'll find it on every page of the manual, talking about the amazing powers of this little gray machine. But not only that, it's baked into the way you interact with the computer through basic programs. There are no memory protection here, or really security of any kind. If you want to change a value in some random address, the kernel's not going to stop you. I've learned to program on systems that isolate the user code and prevent it from interacting directly with the low-level interfaces. There's nothing like that here. That's optimistic programming. Because it has a relatively simple and straightforward architecture, it's much easier to understand what's going on in the core of the machine when it's executing the commands. When I compare this to today's approach, we've went from the sky's the limit to a bunch of walled gardens. This computer may be limited by what it can do, but it doesn't limit how you can interact with it. What I've discovered by playing with this machine is that after 40 years, it's not obsolete. I've been thinking about obsolescence all wrong. I've been defining it using market sales terms only. In the market, if there are better return on investment pursuits, the old line becomes obsolete. That doesn't mean they aren't useful any longer, they just aren't the latest thing anymore. Anyone who's bought an electronic device in the last 40 years has been a victim of planned obsolescence. Things aren't obsolete because they're old, not if they can still do what they were intended to do. These are still cars, right? They don't have all the features of a modern car, but they still do what they were intended to do, and so do these little machines. The market may leave them behind, but they're still relevant. When I look back at that timeline, I think that it might be a shame that the pace of innovation is moving us past humanity's incredible inventions and on to the next thing before we've really had time to explore the last thing. There's a good feeling that comes from slowing down and taking a longer and deeper look. I'm so glad that there's an amazing community out there working to preserve and maintain these machines. I'll keep working on mine. Thanks for watching. Cheers.